Hey everyone, welcome to the Sharon the Red Baron show. I am Sharon with my special guest, Bob Price, who looks like a friend from high school, Sean Lordy, but that's a whole nother thing. I wanted to welcome you all, and I wanted to share with you why I created this channel. I think that many of us can't deny it anymore that we are literally in the Great Awakening. Whether you are awakening spiritually, religious, spiritually, religiously, politically, whatever it is, you're starting to see signs and synchronicities, and you're like, oh my gosh, whatever it is, it's happening, and it's a really exciting place to be. Um, and I am a firm believer that things are going to be changing within this year. I think it's going to be the best of times and the worst of times, but I think if you hang in there and you all stick together, you're going to make things happen. So thank you, Bob, for being here. I appreciate you sharing. So Bob's going to be sharing his story in leaving the Mormon Church. One thing I like to do and ask Bob is, with all my guests, is, are you a believer in signs? And if so, why?
I'm definitely a believer in signs. I look at them more as synchronicities. There's just certain things that pop up in your life, and you're like, that you get to a point where you say, this just couldn't have been a coincidence.
Too many
You,
times, right?
too many
Yeah.
times,
Mm-hmm.
too many things like that, and you say to yourself, well, okay, there's got to be more to it. And the longer you're around, the more times that it happens to you, you're like, oh, this feels like something different. It feels like there's something greater for sure involved in my life, something that is kind of leading me, directing me. And what is that? So it kind of causes you to say there's more at play here than me just being a human and going through life and going through the motions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is there one quick story you can share with us that you're just like, I can't make this stuff up?
Well, I'll tell you what, I had one just recently. I've never been much of a, the world of dreaming is kind of an interesting thing because it's just a crazy world you go into whenever you're in dreamland. But
Oh,
every
I do.
once in a while, without getting too deep in the weeds, I'll kind of explain something that happened recently. So
Yeah, please.
many of us probably associate this with what a lot of people call deja vu and things like that. And
Uh-huh.
just recently I was at my job, and this happens to me on occasion. It doesn't happen to me a ton. It is what I call they're like little breadcrumbs that get laid out for me to remember that I'm doing the right thing and that I'm on the right path and what I call my intended outcome. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the right path.
Mm-hmm.
And as we discuss a little bit more about timelines and things like that, I can explain that a little bit further. But the it was really, really cool. I was at work, and in this moment, and it's as simple as this. In this moment, I was going through this effort of a very mundane task, and I remember looking at the spreadsheet. And in this moment, I was looking at the spreadsheet. An employee came up and started talking to me. This is not my dream. This is real life I'm talking about.
Uh-huh.
And then in this moment, the employee walks away. And in that moment, I remembered that I dreamt that event happening
Oh!
to the
Oh my
T,
gosh!
to what
I
was,
love it. I've had things like that kind of
yeah,
happen to me as well. Oh
to,
boy.
to
Uh-huh.
what was to the point of what was in my spreadsheet, which you want to talk about a boring dream. Let's dream about spreadsheets, right?
Ugh.
But so I was sitting there and I'm like, oh, okay. And in that moment, I kind of give personal thanks and gratitude, right, to the universe, where I go,
Yeah, that's kind
okay,
of
this
cool.
this is an indication to me that I'm where I'm supposed to be, doing what I'm supposed to be doing, to be able to meet my intended outcome, whatever that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interacting with the people that I'm supposed to be interacting. I'm doing the things I'm supposed to be doing. And it's not that I'm doing anything out of the ordinary. I'm just being me and whatever. But in
Mm-hmm.
that space, I'm adding value energetically in the space that I'm in. And so,
Uh-huh.
so
That's it.
I know that I am in that intended outcome. So that was a moment, as an example, of synchronicity for me.
That's crazy. I've had a few things like that happen too, like the deja vu. I
Mhm.
think that's very interesting. That's crazy. You can keep your spreadsheets though.
Yeah, yeah,
Boring.
yeah, boring.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's
Uh,
okay.
so listen, when was your real true great awakening, like that aha moment that, within the church? What was that for you?
I actually had two of them, Sharon. So
Yeah.
the first one happened when I was a young man. I was 16, 17. It's hard to remember now since it's been many moons. But I was at this, just a typical 16, 17-year-old running around, partying, having fun, not
Yeah.
wanting to go to school, just doing whatever. And
Yeah.
I all of a sudden had I had this kind of I was being faced with having to go on a mission. And I say having to go on a mission because at that time I hadn't decided, but being in the LDS culture, that's just typically what you do. You
Mhm.
start, everybody's talking about it. Your parents are talking about it. It's an important rite of passage for a young man, and
Mhm.
great treasures await on the other side. It's like trying to figure out what you want to do with yourself. And so,
Did they ever
uh,
explain what the treasures were, so to speak? I mean, I
well,
know the outcome and all that, but were
well,
they talking tangible or?
well, that's my definition. Nobody really told me that, but
Gotcha.
what I
Okay.
did know is that you are a superstar status when you return from a mission, right? Like, if
Hmm.
you come back, you go to BYU, you are a hot commodity there with the ladies, and so I that was an important that was an
The
important thing.
stallion.
Yeah, that's right. And listen, not to get into that part of the story, but they weren't wrong. They weren't wrong. So,
Oh.
but that's a whole different diversion. So here I was at this period of my life where I'm having to make these decisions, and so I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, well, I better put down the joint. I better put down the partying. And so I started reading, and for my life, they encourage in the church to read the Book of Mormon and
Mhm.
all of those things. And I studied, and I'm just the type of guy that digs in deep. I don't just surface level scratch. Like, so I was going to the
You were
Deseret Book.
questioning.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to the Deseret Book, and I was going to all the bookstores. And this is before the internet, of course, and so you had to do it old school.
Oh,
And in those days, there's a lot more documentation and books out
I believe it.
in regards to information on early church history and things like that. And so I
I
was
think
doing a
it's
lot.
getting harder to find now
Super
because
hard,
if
super hard.
everything's gone electronic and it's easier to
Yeah, and
find. But yeah.
that's part of my awakening journey too, because I'm probably in the greatest generation of transition from the printing press to digital media. And
Yeah.
so I've seen the whole transition and been a victim of it. And I'm going to say a victim of it because what's
Yeah.
happened is the knowledge has become more tightened and more controlled.
I
And
agree with you on
it's
that.
difficult, specifically if anybody wants to do any deep dive or jump down rabbit holes, the narratives are controlled now. And the
Yeah. It's
stories and
harder
the
to find things,
yeah,
definitely.
it's
Things
hard.
with
They're whitewashed. The narratives, you've heard the saying, he who wins the war writes the history. It's a little bit like that. And so you try
that's wow.
the only thing that I was able to do is just get some basics. Of course, you read Mormon doctrine back in the day and some of these other things. And for those of you who are watching or listening to this who have any experience with being in the religion, you understand that book was part of everybody's bookshelf. But nowadays, it's kind of like people talk, and they encourage you not to read it. There's a lot of information.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
it's not
So at
something
one
that they
point it was
broadcast.
readable and now they're like, it's
Well,
not really important. Is
it
that what
was
you mean?
modified a few times. I mean, I'm getting a little bit off the beaten path. There was information out there that did not meet the agenda of the time as time progressed in regards to racism, Adam God
Mhm.
theory, on and on and on. All these different subjects that were
Mhm.
part of the early church, thing that everybody practiced and believed. And then as the church evolved, which is a story in and of itself, later for the awakening talk, as the church
Mhm.
evolved, then some of these things didn't align with the narrative of the time. And so these things kind of fell, and kind of changed. But going back to that, I started reading heavily. I got passionate about it. I started praying, and the prayer was earnest. It was what I would define heartfelt from my heart center. Every fiber of my being, as the young Joseph Smith, would have expressed in his writings.
He's
And
from Sharon, Vermont, by the way.
oh, is he? Okay,
Yeah, I did some research on him
I
because
visited
I,
his.
I was Catholic. So that's why I find these
Oh,
interviews totally intriguing because real quick, every time when I came out here and I started visiting, and I'd be on the plane with my spaghetti strap, you know, like tank tops and all that. And people would be warning, oh, you going into the Mormon country? I'm like, who are these Mormons? Why can't I dress the way I want? They can pound sand. So I digress. Okay.
You get ready for judgment when you get off the plane.
They can judge me all they want because I'm going to be judging them just as much. So,
oh man, well, you know, the interesting thing is I spent time doing it. I was, you know, just doing responsible young man stuff at that point, right? So I switched my life over and I started praying. And at that time, I lived in I grew up relatively, you know, I wouldn't say poor, but I wasn't middle class either. And we lived in this older home. And I was upstairs in my bedroom one night praying, and this is going to sound like
and you were about how old? So you were in college, or where was
oh no, I was still
the 16, 17?
Yeah, 16, 17-year-old.
Okay.
I just started driving, and so
okay.
And I was trying to figure out, hey, am I going to go on a mission? So I better figure this out. If I want to go, I need to actually jump in and see if this is something that I want to do.
Wow, I'm very proud of you for doing your research and asking questions, because the way what I've heard is that's just what you do.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to test it. You know, they say test it. I'm going to test it. So
I'm decided to test the system.
So I decided to test it, you know, and at that time, my mother was great. She, her and I would have these off the wall spiritual conversations, and there was no boundaries, and she was very helpful.
Nice.
She was, a lot of times you don't find that in religion, you know, and so my mother was really good about that. I'd have you know, just a strange idea or a strange thought, and she would entertain it and talk about the, you know, so
that's awesome.
It allowed me to think outside the box and be accepting of other thought processes. You know, I like to call myself liberal Mormon, and that's how I grew up, as a liberal Mormon. And you know, I loved the religion. I loved all of that. One night I was in prayer and kneeled beside my bed, and I remember specifically, you know, the lights. I just felt this presence around me, so I went to go stand up, and I looked up, and the lights, the street lights, always came through my window. They were in my window that night, and I looked up. They were gone. It went black. There was this presence in my room. So I tried to stand up. It was very difficult. There was definitely something there. I could feel it. It went pitch black, so I couldn't see anything. So I scurried across the hallway, and my mom happened to be in there. My dad wasn't. He was downstairs.
Did you run and jump on her bed? Mom.
I did. I said, Mom, wake up. Something's chasing me. It was weird. It probably sounded weird to her. She immediately threw her arm, you know, up in the air, and, you know, they teach you to put your arm in the square and, you know, invoke the name of Jesus Christ. And I felt relief instantly, which was very fascinating to me, because
you were smart enough to pick up on that, though. That's amazing.
Well, it felt like it was going to kill me. Whatever was in there was, it approached me with fear, right? And so I knew it wasn't in my best interest. So I barely got out of the room, and which felt like, you know, it was very real, unimagined. And so long story short, you know, it's like, I didn't realize it at the time, but my mom was able to do that. And
she's a strong spirit, apparently.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, you know, the reality is that the priesthood is reserved for men in many religions, not just the LDS religion, but
because they're afraid of us women. That's why.
Well, there's definitely, you know, on the awakening journey, I found out a lot about that. You're absolutely right.
I know I'm right. I feel it.
There has been an absolute suppression of the divine feminine on this planet. And
I mean, look at what women can do in juggling. I mean, usually they're the ones, and they're working, and they're like.
Yes, it's absolutely
so
true.
I don't want to take away, but that's crazy.
No, preach. I like it.
Met your mom. Dang.
Yeah. So she was really great.
Like, you touch my boy, I'm gonna rip your eyeballs out.
Yeah, whatever it was, I couldn't see anything. I saw nothing. I just felt it. And so, anyways, I hopped in the bed. My dad was downstairs asleep watching TV like dads do. And so we just kind of hung out and talked through what I felt and all of that other stuff. And pretty soon she fell asleep, and I was just laying there, and then I just felt myself get sucked out of my body. And it was the strange.
What do you mean by that? Like,
literally
explaining it. Like, were you half asleep? Were you wide awake?
I was wide awake. And literally spontaneously, I exited my body. I was freaked out because I thought I had instantly died. So I'm traveling through the universe. It's like whoosh, like, and I left, And it was the whole exiting process was a strange phenomenon to me. And I can't even put a speed on it. It felt like I was going a million miles an hour. And I'm like, am I dead? I don't see a white light. What's happening? And I'm flying through the expanse of space, and I can
What did it
see
look like? Just like in the movies?
just like it looks. It's black, and there's just it just felt infinite. It was huge. I just it was happening so fast. The only thing I was thinking about was like, I'm dead. How did this happen? I
Oh,
I
were you super
know
scared?
I was
Oh,
super
I'm
scared
so
because I'm like,
sorry. I can't even
because
imagine.
intuitively I knew that I had more to do with this life. And I'm like,
Mhm.
what is happening to me? And as I'm going, I hear a voice, and it's telepathically communicating with me and giving me information. And what's fascinating is that I'm acutely aware of things that I'm passing. I'm passing these areas and these spheres of spirits and souls that are trapped in these areas. And they seem like I couldn't tell what was going on because I was
Were
going
they?
by them so fast, but they were
Mhm.
just kind of out in this area. Whether they were coming here or whether they were going, I couldn't tell. All I know is they were there. And at the same time,
Mhm.
I was listening, and I was hearing only what I can explain as I call it the music of the spheres. It was just like this heavenly sound of, and the only way I could
Like
do it,
harmonic music?
yeah, like it was a group of angels just harmonizing is what it sounded like to me. It was just like in this, the solfeggio tones. It was similar to that.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
yeah,
and that
yeah.
was and that's what I was flying through and hearing, and also hearing this information and getting this download. And I was hearing all of this stuff, and the whole time I was sitting there, I was freaking out. I was like, I can't be dead. I know I've got more to do. And I just
Yeah,
kept
you're
getting
probably like, I gotta wake up to go to school tomorrow. Where
I was like, wait, how did this happen? And
my mom's
so
gonna kill me.
and then
I'm gonna miss school.
and it just I kept getting downloaded with information, and on all like and there's a lot of things that came through. And I finally, boom, I hit this stop, like I hit a wall. And all of a sudden the area started filling out, and I said, I can't do this. I gotta go back,
Mhm.
because the space started to open up. I was getting ready to meet someone. There was something, a portal was opening. And I said, I just can't do this. I need to
You
go
weren't
back.
ready.
I was
Yeah.
not ready. There was too much fear. And then whoosh, just as fast as I came, whoosh, I came back into my body. And
You
it was
hear
very
about
fascinating.
that kind of stuff all the time. Like that latest movie from Angel Studios. There was one I saw over the summer. Shoot, what was it? And I mean, clearly, as you stated, you didn't die, but you had this feeling
It
and
felt like death. It felt
there
like death. But
oh
I
wow.
felt it was interesting when I remember as I was outside of my body, I didn't look around to see if I had arms and legs or anything like that. I just felt like an entity, like a being, like me, which was
Uh-huh.
fascinating. And I said, because I'm like, I was so confused because it was
Oh, I
so
can't imagine the things that were going through your head
well, it
all
was
at
so
once.
outside of everything that I was taught growing up in the LDS religion. Like I had no point of reference, right? So
Yeah.
it was just so surreal. And no, I wasn't taking drugs. I was off of, I was off of, I had dropped acid at one point during my life, but
Ooh, I would never have tried that. No
yeah, I mean,
way.
but this was unrelated to when I tell people this, and I don't tell many people this, the first thing they ask me, were you taking drugs? And the answer is no. I had been
Mhm.
spiritually into what I was doing for months and months and months. So there was quite a
Yep.
gap in between there, right? And
Okay,
so
that's good. Yeah.
this was an organic event that happened. And so
Wow.
a few things that I brought back with me, and there's a couple things that I was told. Number one was uh, not to take my own life. That was the first thing. It was very, very clear, that it's going to be difficult. You are in this environment where it's very, very difficult. But in this lifetime, uh, this is the big ticket item. This is where everybody is fighting to get in this moment, in this incarnation, and to see the transition, and those types of things. And so don't do it, because getting back, you would be so discouraged if you did,
Oh,
for
wow.
whatever is going to manifest for you. Things will get rough, and it didn't get into that level of detail, but that was the one message that was very, very clear to me. And that was one of the primary ones. And there's a reason for that. And it's because this time is so difficult. The pressure is so intense right now. And
Mhm.
for me, for everyone else, everybody feels it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but the what's on the other side of it, and what's about to happen with the transition of things, which is kind of interesting. So let me say the rest of the other things that I was told. I said, listen, I don't want to know everything. I don't want to know. I don't want to be reminded of all this right now, because my agreement was to come and experience 3D and forget, and to feel the wholeness of this. So
Mhm.
I don't want, I'm ready when I'm ready
I
to,
have like goosebumps thinking
yeah,
about this. This is crazy.
when I'm ready to remember, then organically I want to remember. And I didn't use the word organically, it's my word, my phrase now. But
Yeah.
I said, 17-year-old brain, Bob said, hey, I don't want to know all this right now, but because what I want to do is I want to experience life to its fullest for as long as I can. And boy, did I. It was great, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Before my awakening occurred. So, and I was told a ton of other stuff, but I chose to lock that up until, other things would happen and trigger my awakening later. And
Hmm.
so, so I jumped back in, I went on the mission, and I shut all that stuff out. I pretended like it didn't happen, you know.
Hmm.
One,
Really? How long did it kind of leave your mind, so to
well,
speak? Like, was
one,
it months or was it pretty quick? Like, oh, it's kind of like a dream or,
well, it stayed with me for a little bit,
uh-huh.
and I used it. What's interesting is I came back and I was giving my farewell, and I remember my mom saying, "Rob, don't you want to write down your speech?" And I'm like, no, I don't need to, because I know that whatever I'm going to say is going to come to me in the moment, because I
Yeah.
understood through my experience. After my experience, I understood two things. I understood the concept of energetic exchange and connection to the higher self, and that
It's so
uh,
real too, though. I
yeah,
mean, I never thought that I would be experiencing the things that have been happening to me over the years.
yeah, and you think
But
of it as synchronicity, but truthfully, it's a connection to your greater being and your greater full, your intended outcome, and how you fit into all your contractual obligations and your
I
commitments
know, I
to
want to know
others.
everything. Ugh.
And so, yeah, and so you're a seeker. That's what I love about you, Sharon. You're a seeker, and you
Oh,
want to know. But
thanks. I do.
yeah,
I
yeah,
want the truth.
it's hard because we have this veil, and it certainly makes it a little bit more difficult, but that's part of the challenge. That's what we wanted to do. We certainly made the choice to be here, there's no doubt about it. But so what I realized is that in coming back, that from an energetic perspective, and I already knew who I was at that point, but I refused to believe it, because I had a tremendous amount of religious dogmatic programming that was seated in the
Mm.
back of my mind.
Oh, I bet.
And what had happened is that when I got back, all of the conflict began, my inner turmoil began, because
Back from when this
my
happened or from the mission?
my out of body experience. When I
Okay,
came back,
okay.
I had this inner turmoil. I knew that I was greater than who I was led to believe here. I understood the concept of energetic exchange
I love
and
the way you just
tone and all of
explained
that.
that, and it's so simple.
It's so simple. That's the other thing. This is the
Ah,
other
everyone
thing.
overcomplicates everything out there and everything. It
That
drives
is
me bonkers because they
that
know how
is
to
it.
occupy your brain probably 95% where you have less than a couple percent left to think for yourself.
Well, that's part of the illusion, right? If you think a little
Mm-hmm.
bit off the beaten path here, but if you're going to watch David Copperfield and all that sleight of hand, he looks like a magician, right? But
Mm-hmm.
he's distracting you over here and doing something over here. And so I came back with an understanding, and and it just became increasingly difficult over the years
Oh,
during
I can't even imagine.
because I
It's
knew
just, mhm.
that uh, there was all this confusion. Everything. Why is everything so hard to understand? Why do they make it so difficult?
Right?
Like, because I knew from my experience that everything is organic and easy to understand, right?
Ah,
So, and we
yeah.
all already have the knowledge. And so, as I'm going through this awakening process, and I'm living my life, I'm having the children, I'm getting married, well, backwards. I'm getting married and having the children, and living the LDS dream, and going to church every week and singing the hymns and going to the temple, and and all of that.
So
Uh,
how old were you about at that age?
um, uh, Getting married and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, in the world of LDS, the LDS world, I got married right after my mission. So I was married by the time I was 21.
Wow, they
Ha-
really do. Okay.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
had my first child by the time I was 23. So, so you get really caught up in the family life. You get all caught up in it. It allows you to sink further into 3D duality, right? And it's what I wanted. I wanted to
Well,
just
you wanted
feel
a
it.
family.
I wanted a family. Yeah, and that's a whole other
Yeah.
story in itself. But so but it was hard because every time I couldn't connect to it. I tried to make myself believe, and it's like, why am I doing this to myself, and so the one
Just
thing I
clearly something kept gnawing at you.
yeah, the whole time, the whole time.
Yeah.
And so I just kept putting it off because listen, you've got a family, your children, you're trying to raise them up with the moral code. And the LDS, for all intents and purposes, if you're going to pick one, the LDS church does have some good, people in it, and a great moral code to an extent.
Hmm.
And, I realized I finally got to the point where I'm like, okay, well, this is not working for me, because what I realized is that not just at church, but everywhere in life, politics, everything. You get to that point in life where
Questioning
you start
everything,
questioning everything, right? And
which I love that when people do that. I
it's just
just love it.
your eyes open up differently and they see things
I
differently.
do.
You're
Yep.
not that 20-year-old who knows everything, because you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
right. Yes, I
You're
do.
that late 30s who really does know things because they've experienced it and they've lived it a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yep.
And so long story short, I said to myself, listen, if I realized, if it's what I call now a mind bending philosophy, if I've got to work through this and I've got to struggle through trying to connect the dots and the wires and whatever, then it's not my truth. That truth is not for me, because the truth that exists in the universe, and I've always known it, is easy to understand, is easy to conceptualize, and it's easy to consume. It may be new to you, and that might be a little scary, but you let that seed get in there, you let it germinate, and if it sprouts, then it's truth. And that's what That's the
I
difference.
love how you put that. That reminds me of, I always think of just, can you imagine that feeling if you didn't have to go back to work and you could just do whatever you want and you could just hang out in nature and just take it all in without feeling that rush? Well, I got to get back. I got to,
Oh
like, do you
yeah.
know that feeling we all
Oh
have
yeah.
where it's like, I've got like a couple hours to enjoy myself and then I got to do blah, 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 blah. Like that, just that feeling of just no worry. And does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I
It's
don't
like when
think
we were
anyone,
children. It's like when we were children, right? Like you
yeah,
could
it
be
was
with your
so
best
fun.
friend and like time didn't exist.
Yes, I love that. And we'd all be playing outside, and my mom would be like, "Kids, it's time to eat."
That's
I
right.
don't do that anymore. It's
I
just so
know.
sad. I mean, with all these kids, that's the first thing I noticed out here in Utah was I don't see the kids playing out here either.
Everybody's so scared to let their kids run around. And I just you
That's why you
probably
have
grew
the
up.
buddy system.
I know. It's like, my time when I was growing up, and it's like, the parents are just happy to have you out of the house, and
I know, I know.
everybody,
Hey, I'm not gonna lie either, but at the same time, I wanted my girls to get fresh air, and I loved it.
yeah, yeah,
They used to play outside all the time till maybe about that 11, 12-year-old mark. And it seems to
yeah.
be kind of what it's kind of across the board with a lot of people's kids. They just kind of start retracting, and because that's when their body's changing and no one's talking about it. And they're like, oh my
That's
God,
right. It's
this is the
scary.
only
It's
person. It really is.
scary
You're
out
like,
there.
what's all this going? Like,
Absolutely.
anyhow,
No,
sorry, I
that's
digress.
for real. No, that's for real.
Yeah.
So anyway, so here I am, and I'm just trying to sort things out. And I've got a young family, and I'm like, okay, I just need to power through that. And so it got to the point where then I got to the next level of things where I started to understand the what I call contrived separation of humanity, right? Like whether it's race, whether it's religion, where it's division just within your religion. I mean,
Yeah, why
although
is it still all separated? Like,
I
I
mean,
don't.
it's just there's so much separation with humanity, and it just I'm I don't, I'm an altruist in nature. That's just my, it's, I'm just, utopian. I'm just like, everybody should get along. And
Me
I've
too.
always been that way,
Me
sticking up for the
too.
underdog and all
Yeah.
of that. And so it's been very, very difficult for me to, I'm like, I could never understand the concept. I mean, the logic even,
Oh my gosh,
and
I totally hear you.
in the separation, whether it's gender, whether it's color of skin, whether it just never made sense to me.
Me
And
neither.
to me, it's small brained. To me, it's all small brained. I don't understand it, and that's people's journeys. That's okay. That's up to them,
Yeah.
but not for me. But I started to see that just within my religion quite a bit,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that became a problem. And without being too cliche, I started to notice some of those cracks. And then all of a sudden, I talked earlier in the conversation about the books that were available that were no longer available,
Yeah. Yeah.
the changes that were taking place over time. When I first went to the temple ceremony before my mission,
Mhm.
it was different when I got back to my mission. There were some things that they asked me to do in there where I came out where I was just glazed over because I'm like, what did I just do in there? Like that was
Mm.
crazy. And for people on this, they're not going to be offended. They actually,
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
you have to take all of these oaths and covenants in the temple, and
Yeah.
it to this day, it's why I am completely I don't know. I am absolutely scared and avoid ritual, any type of ritual, minus a couple like coffee in the morning, but just religious ritual to be more specific,
Yeah.
because of this, because what would happen in the first round, they still had in the temple ceremony where if you divulged anything from, that you heard that day, that you kind of went from one ear to the other in a sign, and you said that you would slit your throat, or they could slit your throat. And I walked out of there, and everybody is going, "Good job, Rob! Way to go, and way to be!" And
Wait,
I was
wait, wait.
just,
Are you meaning that they were insinuating that sort of thing? Or is it just like an analogy? You're
yeah, nobody's taking anybody's life, but you're making an oath with the possibility that that
gotcha.
was the outcome. And not that I'd heard that anybody had ever done that, but as as a a young boy getting ready to go on a mission, you're just like, what did I just do? Nobody told me that I was going to go in there and say that if I divulged anything that I heard today by accident, that they could take my life. And I said, what? Nobody talked to me about that. So I got out.
Okay. Can I just say, coming from New England, we're like diehards out there. If
Yeah.
someone told us that, we'd be like, I don't think so. I mean, like
Right.
I would be their worst nightmare if I was if I went
That's
into the
right.
church and I heard that. I'd be like, oh, I don't think so.
Well,
Like
it's just
that's just me. But
it's fascinating because as a young man, and I'm kind of bouncing around on the timeline here a little bit. At the time, I was just all wrapped up in, you know what, Rob, this is sacred, not secret. This is sacred. We don't talk about it, And then when I got out, everybody was hugging me and just like, you've done the right thing today. And I'm just like, okay, send me to Hawaii, which is where I went on my mission, by the way. But
nice. At
yeah,
least you
I was
got
like,
a good trip out of it.
yeah, I wasn't getting sent to, Argentina. No offense, anybody who's been to Argentina, but
I mean,
I,
obviously Hawaii is part of the States, but one
yeah,
thing I've always been curious to learn is, and I know they do a lot within the States, but why don't they have people do a lot of the missions in the state? I mean, like in the country,
I
I
don't know.
mean.
I don't know. I don't know.
I've always had a hard time, like, wouldn't you want to help your own
Well,
country
I don't
first? I
know.
don't know.
I've been
I don't
driving around,
know.
I drive around Provo and I see missionaries down there and I feel bad for those guys. Like that's a tough calling, to get down there and actually do some missionary work in the highest densely populated LDS, place on the planet, but that's okay.
Yeah, but
So
that's just one thing that I just don't understand. It makes no sense to me. Like if it, they can see our country's falling apart, like they should be like throwing all your money that you've donated left and right to everyone.
I agree. I agree.
I
So
would, if I was in charge, I'd be like, what do you need? I mean, that
yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I'm sure you'll have other guests on your show that can tell you a little bit more about some of the interesting paradoxes within the LDS Church in regards to the stuff that's traveling around the internet right now, with how the tithing money is used and how It's just, it's just
Mm.
like religion in general, not having to pay tax. It's just mind blowing. And, the property that they own, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, while the members, and what you have to go through if you are struggling, and they encourage you to pay tithing before, and then they'll help you with the food. There's just all of this craziness that
Like it should
happens.
just be do the right thing and help
Just do the
someone
right,
when they need it.
just
That's
help them,
all.
right?
Like
You
like
know,
all these homeless people that are just multiplying everywhere, especially in downtown, Salt Lake. Like, why aren't they helping them? I don't understand this. If they're in quote unquote control of the state. One thing I just have to tell you, Bob, I say this all the time, but when I moved here, I had a problem because a lot of us moms back in New England, we could get our mummy juice at the grocery store. And I remember the first time I'm like, where's the wine? Everyone is just like, oh, they don't sell that here. I'm
yep,
like, what?
yep.
And I mean, I'm
Hey,
not a gambler, but every once in a while, maybe like twice a
yeah,
year, I'll get some scratch tickets. I'm like, where are the scratch tickets? And they're like, they
I
don't do that
know.
either. I'm like, what
You don't,
do?
well, in
At least let me
Utah,
decide. I don't need someone to tell me. If I want to do it, I'm going to do it. It's like
no,
everything else we do.
you're going to have to get high on swigs and opioids. That's it.
No.
So soda and
Ew.
painkillers, but
Soda.
that's how they do it here. But yeah, you don't get to experience the full expanse of duality in Utah. If you really want to have an experience, you have to get outside the state to have that
Mm-hmm.
freedom as an adult.
Mm.
So yeah, so that was kind of me traveling through things, and I said, I have to, I'm going to start digging, and this is really when the internet was the Wild West.
Yeah.
I started diving into things on the internet, and frankly, a lot of that documentation and a lot of those books that I had available to me, and had access to, they were still, there were people that were scanning onto the internet. There was, for there might be people that are on this call that remember Lighthouse Ministries, I think it was with their names, but it was the Tanners, and they were pulling together a bunch of stuff in regards to a lot of the nonsense that was happening behind the scenes.
Such
uh,
as
well, a lot of this
bad
stuff gets
stuff.
controversial. I
I
even
like
worked.
controversy. This is how people you can talk openly and
Yes,
and no
yes.
one's going to be judging us here
Well,
because
it's so crazy. I work for a printer, and not to get too far off the beaten path. I work for a printer because I've been in printing as a trade, and things like that in my
oh,
career.
you could help us copy
Yeah.
the maps then.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Mining maps, the
I
original
have a lot of
mining
context.
maps.
Oh, I
The
forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I need to find someone I would trust because if anything happens to those, we're going to cut a deal with some of the art galleries.
Mm.
They're
Yeah.
all crooked anyhow.
Yeah. It's
It's just
hard.
like the movies. They're doing stuff with them. Anyhow, I digress. I'm sorry.
That's good. So I'm here for the ride. So I was working for a printer, and he was a Mormon apologist. And so one half of his print shop was pamphlets in regards to apologetics, supporting the Mormon Church. But it was ironically, as I was going through I was even printing some of the pamphlets, and I was looking at some of it. I was like, I mean, you have to work hard to make these things connect. Like, there was crazy things that Joseph Smith was saying. Some of it documented it. Some of it was just, verbal that people had, passed on, and, whether it
Do
had
you
to
think he
do.
was one of the good guys in the beginning?
I think Joseph Smith had some ulterior motives.
You
But
don't think he was a good guy then? Because
uh,
he got kind of whacked early in his life, didn't he?
no, my opinion is that
Uh-huh.
he was better than Brigham Young. Let's just put it that way. He was better than Brigham Young, but he was still self-serving, and took a lot of people for a ride. And there was equal. Here's my takeaway with Joseph Smith, and there's so many experts in this that I could probably be proved wrong after I say it, and that's fine. But this is my
Yeah,
takeaway.
yeah.
Is that Joseph Smith had equal parts of wanting to help people and also wanted to serve himself, and that's where the problem
Oh,
was. And
that
then
is a problem,
and
especially if we're
then
talking. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. And then the other aspect of, he upset the Masons, and I think that was a problem.
Mhm.
And then
Meaning the good Masons back in the day, or the not so good ones?
just the
Mm.
Masons, just the
Okay.
Freemasons, hijacking the temple rituals was a problem, and doing what he did.
Okay.
And then Brigham Young coming in behind him, and doing what he did to get the LDS Church into a new line of sight out to the west. He knew that Joseph Smith couldn't be around to do that. So I think there was a lot of nasty stuff going on within the politics of LDS Incorporated
Oh, I
at
think
the time.
everywhere, not just even then.
Yeah,
I think to this day, if
Joseph
you could
Smith had no
hear,
chance. The poor guy had no chance to get further than he did because there was people on the left that were against him, and there were people within his own organization that were against him. And Brigham Young was at the top of that food chain that kind of squeezed him out. And so, if you want to get into the history of Brigham Young, that's a whole journey in itself. But the reality is that Joseph Smith was a fraud too. The things he did was a fraud. And so you talk about here was one of my experiences that kind of started my awakening journey along with the internet and kind of started the momentum again. And I bring this up and I'm tying it back into the Mormon Church. So the Pearl of Great Price is a record of scripture that we have in the Mormon Church that you may or may not be aware of.
I'm not aware of
And
because I'm Catholic.
Yeah, it's inspired writings and scripture, official scripture of the church, not addressed a whole lot, but it is in the canon. When you buy scriptures at Deseret Book, it is packed in there. Doctrine and Covenants, Pearl of Great Price, and Book of Mormon. They're all connected together. The problem is that nobody spends a ton of time going over it. So you look in there and there's apocryphal writings that are they're Egyptian in nature. And what Joseph Smith did is he claimed to have translated those into the Pearl of Great Price, the Journey of Moses or whatever. I can't even remember now. It's so far behind me.
Probably a good thing, so you can start from scratch.
I had to clear the RAM, Sharon. I had to clear the RAM and open it up for reality.
I love how you say that because everything is so connected when you really, it's that simple. Like people talk about programs. We got TV program and software programming. We got memories and your memory storage and your RAM. And you got the virus, which you could have chose any word.
Yes.
Anywhere in the entire world, but you chose the word virus.
Well, since we're on that path, I'm going to say I was in the process of defragging my brain.
Okay.
And so long story short, I got a hold of this book. I went on the internet and there is this group that had put together some fantastic documentation because since Joseph Smith got his hands on those apocryphal writings and changed the drawings and put them in the Pearl of Great Price, Egyptology became a thing and people were able to translate Egyptian writing, right? So I was reading this book on what the actual translations were of this versus what Joseph Smith put in the Pearl of Great Price. And I realized that son of a bitch.
Everything. It's
right.
All the books, even I say this, I think during every interview I've done, but it really rings in my head off the hook that Jonathan Cahn, he's one of the best biblical scholars in the entire world. He's on YouTube and everything. And I remember one time typing in, when was Jesus really born? And it wasn't even December 25th. It was the springtime. But what was interesting is he said openly, the Vatican openly admits that they have revised the Bible over 300 times. And to me, the first thing that came into my head is, why would they do that? Why wouldn't you want to keep history as honest and as true as possible so that we all know the truth?
Yeah.
That's when I was like,
yep, and so began the descent into the rabbit hole. Am I right?
Yes. I love that so many people are doing this though, because honestly, I am not the type. I've been stubborn ever since I was a little girl. It's like when someone tells me what to do, I don't like it. I've always felt, and I don't mean it in like I'm a better, like it just never felt right to me. I mean, your parents are one thing, but everyone else, I don't know, I didn't like the way that people would just be like, you just got to act this way, look this way, whatever. And
why? Because I told you to.
Yeah, I guess it's just that way. Yeah. And to me, I just, enough of that. I'm sorry, but it just always got under my skin. And I feel like a lot of people that are going through this great awakening, they feel the same at some point in their life, you know?
They do. And the longer you've been dealing with indoctrination, whether it's religious or just social indoctrination through the school system, through family indoctrinations, right? I mean, all of those pressures get you to a point to where you're scared to break out of that shell, so you
Yeah.
have to be really strong. The strength you're talking about, where you're like, no, you're just, and you're willing to, exactly.
That's what I say
That's,
to anyone tells me what to do at this point in my life for I don't know how long. I'm like, what?
I always
They
looked at
know
those
when I get
people. I always looked at those people that were hermits, and I'm like, why are you living alone? Like, why? And now I'm starting to
no, you
understand.
get it. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's not because you dislike people, it's because you would rather be your authentic self, and
Yep.
you'd
I
rather
agree.
you'd rather follow your truth, and you'd rather not have to feel the pressure of being condescended, judged, or any of those other things.
Yeah.
And
No
that's
one does.
no
No
one
one
does.
does.
No one
Right.
does. And we live in
Yeah.
a society like that. You've got to pick your favorite sports team. You got to pick your favorite religion. You got to pick your and
Yeah.
the difficult part is that you know, if you don't agree, all of a sudden the ego wall goes up on that other person, then they go into defense, and it's not worth the contention, because all it does is create more separation. And
Yeah.
so
But that
anyway,
was done on purpose,
that
as
was
we
done on
know.
purpose, right? We're
Loser
not.
faces. Your time's coming. Ha ha. But so.
That's right. Like it's exactly, it's the illusion, right? That we're all separate. And
Yeah.
if you want to believe that there's some nefarious, group behind it or not, it just is. And so you have to,
Hmm.
you just have to, once you start seeing that, then you're just like, oh. And then, you go through this process of awakening where
You're like,
you're,
gosh, I got to make up for all that time I lost, right?
yeah, yeah, but it feels almost insurmountable. You say to yourself, this is too big. This is too big.
Oh, if
Things are
you could only
so,
be in my head and the things that I get downloads on. I'm like, serious God, why'd you choose me? I'm just like, but I
yeah,
think
you,
everyone feels that
you
way.
feel very diminished because of that indoctrination that I was talking about earlier. You feel, because part of my awakening journey has been discovering that it never ends. It is always going, and that's when I realized. After finding this out about Joseph Smith and about the Pearl of Great Price and whatever, all of a sudden I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to go fall full. What's at risk here? At the time, my ex-wife, now my wife, was vehemently opposed to anything coming into the home that was challenging, and she was not willing to
Mm,
discuss it. She was not. It was the Antichrist, and that's
mm.
just not who I am. I'm a seeker. I'm like, well, listen, if you have the truth, then why are you going to hide from even a discussion that was already assigned to me that something was wrong? So
Oh,
that's fine. I
yeah.
just did it on myself. I did it by myself. It created a rift, and now I'm divorced. But here we are.
So how did that affect you though? What was your when you decided that the marriage and everything wasn't going to work, how did that unfold for you and what happened after? I mean, was it just completely devastating or
It was
were
devastating.
you totally,
I stayed on
exiled from
my
the church? Like how did
No, no, I peacefully abdicated. I'm still on the rolls because I realized from a higher perspective, it doesn't matter either way. I've got nobody knocking
yeah,
on my door. And if they did, I'd say, hey, have a good day,
yeah.
because I don't need the message, but thank you. But the reality, because you go through this process in leaving the religion, if we talk on that for a moment, to where you're angry. It's a grieving
You're mad at
process.
them.
Yeah, it's literally a grieving process that you have to go through,
Yeah.
and letting it go. And that's a different, the grieving process is different for everyone. So
Yeah.
I when I
Sad, then mad, then what are all the stages? Yeah,
yeah,
everyone.
denial, you go through the denial, you go through
Yeah, how could
the
you do this
anger,
to me?
the
Like, yeah,
betrayal, on and on and on.
yeah, yeah.
And once you sort through all that, it's part of the spiritual journey, and you coming out of that cocoon and realizing that there's a
Good
whole lot
movie.
more. Yeah, that is a good movie.
Mhm.
There's a whole lot more going on here. And so
Yeah.
so what happened to me is I spent a lot of time just doing my own research. I stopped talking to my ex about it. She didn't want to hear about it. I was condescended to. I was treated differently by her at that point. It just created a rift that couldn't be repaired.
What about your children? How did that, were
I
you,
didn't I didn't I didn't burden them with it.
okay.
Because what I realized is as I started
But they still loved you for you. Like they didn't,
for a
I
period
guess
of
not.
time, and that's a different part of the story. But
Mm.
what I continued on with my spiritual journey, and uncovered the aspect of just realizing that each one of our spiritual journeys is our own. We're,
Yeah.
and I visualize it like a ladder. We're all climbing up a ladder. Some of us are on different rungs than others,
Uh-huh. I like
uh,
that.
it doesn't make the people that are on the rungs above us are no better than the people below us. We were there once,
Yeah,
and
I
and
agree.
so I realized it's not my job to preach to anyone. It's not my job to share my story unless I'm asked.
Let them
I
seek them, let them
Yeah,
seek the knowledge on their own.
and I ask for their permission to share. If they truly
Yeah.
want to know, I'm like, are you sure you want to know? Because this is
Mm,
my story, it's my truth, and it's up to you to take what resonates with you and leave the rest behind. And
yeah.
typically, what happens in the natural sharing, like you and I are doing right now, Sharon, is that a
Yeah.
lot of times,
Sharing Sharon.
Sharon,
Sorry.
Sharon, I like what
That's
you did
funny.
there.
Sorry.
Exactly.
Mm,
When we're doing that, what happens is that depending on your level of indoctrination and the type of the programming that's been taking place all the years, and if you're trying to break free, you're constantly getting pulled back into it, and so you're in a constant state of denial. And so what typically happens is you hear and you bury it, and then at some
mm,
point something happens, a synchronicity or whatever. All of a sudden, that seed starts to sprout, and you start another step on your spiritual journey. And that's the miracle of it.
See,
It's super
you
awesome.
you explain things so, like, I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, but way better than any pastor or anything like that. I'm just saying, or
Oh,
priest
thank
or
you.
whatever.
This is just my
Yeah.
personal experience. And so
Yeah.
bottom line, I mean, because when I was coming out, I was there was a lot of stuff that I was just like, wow, these people are freaking crazy. If I hadn't
Yeah.
if I
And
hadn't
no
had that.
disrespect to people that are watching, because we understand that, like he had just said, that, I mean, I just wanted to say
Well,
that because this is hard.
we haven't started talking about my belief systems and my truth yet.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm just talking about the high level, departure, because the reality is when you first start hearing it, you go into a state of denial,
Yeah.
and you think that the people you're talking to, oh, they're just crazy. But the
Yeah.
reality is that if you're on the journey, what you're going to do is listen to everything. When I left, I was still going to church every Sunday, right? I was still pretending, but in the background, I was studying Buddhism. I was studying all the religions, all the way into Luciferianism, all the way into Satanism, everything. I wanted to
Just so you could just
Freemasonry,
put the
everything.
big picture together,
At a
so
high
to
level,
speak.
not everything super super deep, but enough to get a basic understanding. And the
Yeah.
idea is that I realized that there's little golden nuggets hidden everywhere. There's truth
Hmm.
and connectivity in everything.
Yeah,
So
I agree with
the
you.
concept of good and bad, the concept of light versus dark, all of that.
Then all our entertainment.
Yeah. And so
Learn something, people.
I
Just
studied it all, and I had a bunch of different teachers. You bring up a channeler. I probably heard about a channeler. I've studied NDEs in the hundreds and hundreds, because NDEs and OBEs were very, very similar to my experience.
I think that that's what the Angel Studio movie I saw this past summer was, Near Death Experiences. Was that what it was called? It was very well done, though.
Oh,
Very
was
well
it?
done. Oh, I can see right through what they're doing. I can see right through what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think you do too. It's
Oh,
just
of course.
they're
So
credible, and you need some credibility to explain it, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
no,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. It's all a show, as you know. It's all a show. You eventually sit back and you realize, okay, there's a greater thing going on here. So I had several teachers along the way that really helped me open my mind. When I had going all the way back, when I had my out of body experience, I knew that my awakening would start up again when I met a specific teacher. I knew in my mind's eye who that
Hmm.
teacher was. Um,
And
it's just not anybody that I'm going to share the name of right here. I mean, you and I could probably share it offline, but I want everybody to have their own spiritual journey. This
I
person,
like that answer.
because the reality is your story and your script is uniquely your own. And so
For everyone.
for
Yeah.
everyone, right? So if you're meant to come across that individual, maybe it was me tonight, I should have said it, but I just don't feel comfortable sharing any of those teachers right now because
Yeah, no,
it's
of
just
course.
it's
I
ultimately
told you, you just call me out because I like, I'm a digger. I'm a digger.
yeah. So I
See
mean,
where I
so
can get to on my limit here, but yeah.
it's interesting when you start hearing things and they start resonating within your heart center. You start to feel them within you.
Hmm.
It's not in your head. It's not in your mind. It's within you. That's the difference.
That's the
I
kingdom of God right in here. We have it all in us.
It's
Like, I
all in
mean,
us.
I mean, I got shadow banned. I posted something about, the Christ gene and everything, and it got shadow banned. I'm like, but this
Ugh.
is like,
You're
see
getting
where I'm
people
going
too
with that?
close to the doorway. So the along my initial awakening was with a specific teacher that I never got to meet face to face, but
Hmm.
I had the opportunity through the internet and through other people who had met him that were close friends of mine. And
Mhm.
so the one thing that I remembered from my out of body experience to this moment as I started awakening was that I am a sovereign individual without beginning or end, that I am a creator being, that I've always existed and will always exist. So when you understand those three things, all of a sudden, was it three things? When I understood those things, all of a sudden it removes the fear, and fear is the great blocker
Yeah.
to everything.
Hello, what's the famous quote? Everyone in the entire world knows that was
That's
a
right.
rep game. The
Yeah.
only fear,
The only thing to fear is fear
fear
itself.
itself.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but the problem is everybody's fear is based on when I die, right? If I'm not
So
doing the right things,
sad.
if
I
I'm not,
know.
you forget to live. And the other great remembrance that I had is that the linear time construct is built specifically for this experience. We at a greater our greater aspect of self, and literally we're fragmented out. Uh, it,
That was hard for me to
that's
totally,
a
that
hard concept.
it's
That's why I don't want to get into it.
it is, but
We're living
once you
multiple
get it,
timelines. We're living in a multiverse of multiple timelines.
and they say it in all your entertainment and in your movies. I
It's
mean,
pretty crazy. Marvel has
I
thrown it out there for everybody to see.
yeah,
It's not fiction.
I mean, I say this on every, I am just fascinated that literally this whole story has been playing out our entire lives and we never even knew it.
No,
It's
no,
called the art of war.
yes, I love it. Well said. Well
Yep.
said. It's right there, and we just refuse to see it.
Yeah, because it's quote unquote, all you have to say, the things that drive me crazy, and I'm just going to share this, and maybe some people can take this and utilize it however they want, but um, I don't like it when, how can I put this? I was just there. I was just there. Shoot, I lost it. There were two things I wanted to talk about. What were you just saying? It triggered something in
Well, we
me.
were talking about fear
Yeah. And then
and
the
the overcoming.
movie.
Yeah, and then overcoming fear. But the multiverse was the other aspect that we were talking about, and
Yeah.
how we exist in a fragmented state to have multiple experiences in the multiverse all at once in the
Yep.
eternal now. I
Okay.
didn't
It's
say
coming.
eternal
It's
now,
coming.
but it is the eternal now that
It's
it's
coming.
happening.
It's coming to me. It's coming to me. Darn it. Oh, there was two important things I wanted to bring up for people to
Oh,
think about. Um, uh-oh, if you can give me one more second, couple seconds, because I feel like people will be able to use this. Fantasy, things are scripted as fantasy. Um,
well, you did say art of
here it
war.
is, here it is. Don't take this without consulting your doctor everywhere you go.
Oh yeah.
Everywhere you go. So it puts the fear. I mean, I understand for certain health concerns, like people with cancer. But at the same time, if someone's going to go the holistic route for cancer, do you get what I'm saying? I mean, they put that fear in you it's like they're already programming your head to
Yep.
consult your doctor, consult your doctor. But here's our meds. It could give you a heart attack. You could die. You could have palpitations. You could have like, you know what I mean? It's
I
like,
love the commercials. Most of the commercial is a whole bunch of words saying this is all the risks to taking this.
but it's going to
That's
cure
what I
your
love it.
headache. It's going to cure
It's
your
gonna be
headache.
great. You're gonna love it.
I'm sorry for people that are watching this. I don't mean any disrespect, but I feel like a lot of people have gotten to this certain place where they're just seeing things. And why the heck? I mean, this is what kills me is, it's a whole system. These people know that when people get older, I mean, I remember when my own grandmother, after my grampy died, she needed meds and she was cutting them in half because they were so stinking expensive. Well, that defeats the whole purpose and so
Yep.
forth. And I'm thinking, none of this that our elders should be even worrying about paying taxes, paying health insurance, paying for their meds. They should be living out the rest of their lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That
Yep.
it's so
It's all
messed
wrong.
up.
It's all wrong.
Yeah.
It's all wrong.
Yeah, and even and that was the other thing I wanted to say. Not only what they say, making you paranoid, not making your own choice, but apparently they do it in a lot of different religions and so forth. But as well as, like I just said, the label that they put on entertainment. This is fantasy. So then I'll clearly, or this is fantasy, and literally in someone's mind, or this story is not a true story or something. But really, what I'm finding is a lot of these stories are being used to explain the big picture. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
the art of war. It's gonna be so
Absolutely.
crazy. I like to think of all the positive things that they're gonna use
No,
it.
it's modern day propaganda. They have so many ways to instill it. YouTube is the greatest propaganda machine on the planet.
Yeah,
And for all its benefits, it's also got an aspect. The ocean is so deep for everybody now. You just don't know what's down there anymore,
yeah.
and
I think it's
so
for
it's
all
difficult.
all of the
Yeah,
platforms except the
that
newer ones that don't silence you. Like
well,
I love Telegram. That's my go-to. Telegram. I only stay on Facebook just because of, I've had my list of friends, but I've just been getting a little more active on that. But there's Rumble, there is Truth Social, there's so many others, and I just feel that that's the way that things are going to go. Because who wants to be silenced at all? Even the people that don't agree with people on the right and left and whatever, like we shouldn't be silenced because that's what it's all about.
absolutely,
It's
absolutely.
freedom of speech, and now
The
you can't have any.
You
What's up
can't
with
have any.
that?
I know.
I got a problem with
Yeah.
that. I got a lot to say.
It's so crazy that we live in a democratic country, right? But there's just different ways that we're silenced versus, we like to point the finger at, North
Yeah,
Korea or some of these other places, or even China, where things feel like they are, more communist and people don't have a voice, which is true. We're made to believe that we have democracy here. And that's the great illusion. Is it
mhm.
greater than some of the other environments on the planet? Sure. Yeah, I can't deny that. But the reality is do we have true democracy? Absolutely not. Not the way that it was intended
No.
with our founding fathers, which I believe were inspired. But
Yes,
the
I
one thing
agree.
I wanted to say before, and I don't know if we're running up against time, but there's one thing I
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
tail into that part of awakening while I was still in the LDS church. I realized all of these things in regards to my sovereignty and all of these things. That the one thing that was super, super important to me was that my authenticity was paramount, right? So
Yeah,
in breaking free from this, I realized that all of that was being diminished, and the greater aspect of religion and humanity, we're taught to give our power away from the minute we exit the womb.
I
And
agree.
this is the great diminishing of humanity. So whoever started this thing out intended for it to be this way, and it's been going like this for a long time, being perpetuated by whoever you want to think in your conspiracy story is in charge of it. I don't know. But the reality is that we already have all of these answers within us. We have the ability to connect to a greater being. And the reality is that, at least my reality, is that I don't pray a whole lot anymore. I used to pray regularly when I was religious. And the reason is because I was going outside of myself and asking for help when I know that I can help myself. Now, I'm
I
not,
love how you just said that. It's
yeah,
just so simple and beautiful at the same time that it was more powerful when you're going within than giving your
yep,
power away. That's
yep.
another thing that they talk about in all your entertainment and movie.
Hmm.
Don't give your power away,
Don't
but
give your power
clearly
away.
that's what we've been doing.
Well, the worst thing about religion, and here's the other realization I had, is that I realized that it was necessary, right? Religion is necessary on
I
this
agree. If
planet.
we didn't have some type of,
Organized religion is necessary, but you outgrow it. And that's the problem, getting out when you've outgrown it and realizing that you're ready to take the training wheels off and start being on your own. And that's the problem, because what happens in organized religion, or any type of other breakaway cults or any of those other things, is
Mhm.
that it creates a toxic codependency because you're used to giving your power away. And
Yeah,
so that's the message I want to get out. That's the greatest
yeah.
liberation, is when you realize that you have everything within, that you don't need to be codependent on a God, whatever you believe your God is at the time.
Because
Uh,
that's what Jesus was trying to explain
right,
to people in the
right.
first place, that we're all our own God. And that's what, and oh,
You don't need to
and
pay a tithe. You don't need to pay a tithe. You don't need to follow all these rituals. You don't need to do all these things, because guess what? Guess what? The universe loves you unconditionally already. We're
yeah.
all one,
But
so
we
you
weren't
learn all these
taught
things.
that at
No.
all. And you know, the one thing I loved how you put that, because honestly, when you mentioned about from birth on, I didn't believe it at first till I ended up digging deep either. I'm
Mhm.
like, nah, because my mom was a labor and delivery nurse. She delivered both my
Yeah.
girls, you know. I'm like, no, no way.
Yep.
And then I saw all the legit documented information from so long ago, and it was in our face all along. And I'm like, what? So these people, that they turned America into a corporation, and why did, you know, and then you just start asking yourself, well, why was the British always fighting with everyone? Well, it doesn't take, you know what I mean? It's just a control thing. But this way they, anyhow, but
Yep.
one thing I just wanted to mention, because I remember, and maybe someone, this will resonate with someone as well, is I remember when I was sitting in church and listening to the priest, you know, Catholic Church, is I can appreciate them talking about the quote unquote history that happened within the Bible, but they didn't explain all these feelings. Like, literally, the thing that drove me the craziest was that no one talked about our voices in our head, because we all have them, but no one even teaches you that in your religion school. It's almost like they do it on purpose so you feel like you're crazy, but we
Hmm.
all do it. Do you get
Yep.
what I'm saying? So I'm like,
Absolutely.
so why
It's
isn't
the
anyone teaching me this, or any
Well,
of us?
they
Like,
it's a business, right? So if they
yeah,
don't create a need for you to go outside of yourself, then there's no need for them. And so
yep,
when you look at those aspects of things and you start seeing the bigger picture, you realize, okay, well, listen, I'm at a point now where I think I've outgrown this, because, and
it gets old.
for those of us who, and a lot of us are trapped in it, right? Like, we've got young families and the risk is high. It's like trying to get divorced in a 20-year relationship. The risk is high. You stand to lose everything.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
you have to really strategically plan it out. I took the divorce route out. I've lost half of my children, and all of these
I'm
other
so
things.
sorry. I'm
Well,
really
it's what
sorry.
happens. In the eternal perspective of things, have I lost?
Yes,
No.
I know what you
It's their
mean.
journey, and I respect their journey. But
Yep,
you know
you
what I
can't
respect?
force it on them.
No, I respect my journey too, though. So,
Yes,
here,
everyone should.
right, right, and
Everyone is
so.
just as important as the other. I mean, I think that's what people should start realizing, is that they are important. They
Mhm.
matter, not in this superficial, like materialistic way, but I matter in, you know, validate. It doesn't mean you have to agree with me, but at least acknowledge my feelings. I think
Yeah, yeah.
everyone feels that way. Just acknowledge them. I'm not asking you to
Yep.
agree. I'm not pushing you.
There's
You
no
know, it's
need to
just,
defend yours. There's no need to defend
yeah, and the
yours.
whole bully
Yeah.
thing, I can't, the one thing that drives me crazy is, even in high school, I remember that just all the girls were like,
Hmm.
and I really, to be honest, I don't think I played into it that much, but I recognized it even more after, like, why are these adults picking up the phone and going, did you hear what so and so did? Like, I'm just cutting the cord. What about you? You know, the bully that
Yeah.
ends up trying to get everyone to team
Yeah.
up and they show kids and people how to do that in your entertainment, and they don't even realize it, because I don't think any one of us were born to be mean, to be quite honest. I think it
No,
was something
nope.
that was taught.
It's learned behavior for sure.
Yeah,
Learned
yeah,
behavior. Yeah,
Yep.
and you know, it's hard. The older you get, the more addicted to drama you are. And the reality is that
Not me. I cut it all out. I love
that's
it.
TV is built around that now. And so you get sucked into those TV shows and the drama,
Yeah.
and if you can cut it out, even better,
Yep.
because
Yep. Unless they learn how to decode, and then like people like me, I'm like, pause,
ooh,
pause,
what are they saying within
neurology.
what they're saying? Like,
Yes, because
yeah,
I always hear the duality so much, and I'm like, ooh, that would be a good clip for them to like to do use for the big
yeah.
exposure and all that kind of stuff. Well, Bob, can I ask you what words of advice do you have for someone that just is getting that sense in them that it just doesn't feel right to me anymore? Because I honestly, I see it, the people I've been talking to, I'm really, really proud of them because the way I like to explain it is it's like everyone in life, like you've been trampled on, beaten down, and they're still standing and they stood up for themselves and their own values in whatever religion or however you're awakening. You woke up for a reason,
Hmm.
awakened for a reason. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? And now I mean, people are rising and shining. Instead of them feeling like a victim now, I feel like even though a lot of people can still relate to those feelings of just despair and losing family and friends and so forth, but I think right now, here in time, they are rising up going, holy shit, I made it through the rain. And
Hmm.
now I can start seeing things and I'm going to rise and shine. And no more am I going to like silence myself because they can all kiss my ass. I'm tired of being told what to do. I want to start thinking for myself. And I'm finding that people are really starting to find their tribe, like they're people that get them and
Hmm.
they're not judging them. And you know, I feel like a lot of people with any religion, they're going on that spiritual journey. And I want to encourage everyone, cut the cord on the whole, like this woohoo, they're weird and all that. That's not what it is at all. Like they're literally showing you in your entertainment what it feels like. Now, remember, it's not fantasy. Let's think that they're writing this for the art of war for you to understand. But it's a real, real feeling when you can finally say, I love myself enough that I can do without these people who want to keep bullying me and telling me what to do. And just coming together and share your stories. I'm encouraging people to start sharing their stories with their friends because we're going to create some FOMO. Because you know how it
Hmm.
is. People have a fear of
Yeah,
missing out. So when they start seeing all these people that they actually know and they're interviewing and asking for others to share their awakening stories, they're going to be like, oh, I think there's something to this. What am I missing? And that might just open the gateway for them to start being open and start doing some research on their own instead of being told all the time, is what I'm saying.
yeah,
Does that
yeah.
make sense?
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting. Everybody's in a different spot with it, right? Like some people
Yeah.
are dipping their toe into it. Some people are hiding in shame. Some people are just right
Yeah.
out in the open. And the few words of advice I would give are this, you know,
Yep.
every person's spiritual journey is their own. And if you feel like you need to defend your space of what you believe, then you're not convinced in your belief system. So have compassion, have empathy, and allow everybody's perspective to be different than yours on the spiritual journey, and
I
don't
agree.
judge them for it. The
Yeah.
other thing I would say is that awakening is also a healing journey,
It
right? So
is. Yep.
so what I would say is that at any healing, and I'm no therapist, and I'm not licensed or any of those other things.
Yep.
I've just looked
Honestly,
it
I kind of don't
up.
believe in a lot of them now because
Yeah,
I'm realizing we can, I mean, they're showing you in your entertainment. Well, when did you start feeling this way? Oh, I was like 12 years old. Well, what happened? Oh, this kid, whatever, like
yeah,
they're already in you. And I mean, the more serious stuff like pedophilia and human trafficking, that stuff, definitely. But other than that, I think everyone has the tools within them. That's
yeah,
how we were
yeah.
built.
We
And
really,
who's going to know yourself better than yourself than
oh, for
telling some
sure.
stranger?
That is absolute truth. And I would just say the only
Gosh, I
way
should
that
have
we
been a
could,
philosopher.
you should have been. I don't see you writing this stuff down, Sharon. I think you need to write this stuff down. That's right. Good, good, good. Yeah, the last thing I would say is that this last one is twofold. In order to heal, we have to feel. So I would say that as you go through each process of awakening, And if things don't sound right and you dip in and you back out, don't be hard on yourself. Feel it.
Yeah.
Don't put that pressure on. I've got to discover this. I've got to hunt it down. I've got all this pressure. Just go
Yeah.
through it in your own time.
Baby
It's
steps.
baby steps. It's a birthing process. Don't be hard
Yeah.
on yourself and feel it,
Yeah.
because that's honestly, everyone who may be watching this, I hope you remember at some point, the whole reason why we have incarnated here is so we can feel the paradox of duality. And so part of that is not shoving your feelings down deep inside. It's about feeling them as you go through them, because you
Yes.
probably won't have this experience again if you don't come back.
I love what you just said. That was beautiful because honestly, if someone mentioned what you just said about reincarnation like 10 years ago in my life, I'd have been like,
Mhm.
what?
Yeah, we didn't even
But
get to talk
once
about that. We didn't even
I
get to talk about that.
know, because honestly,
I've got a whole pitch on
maybe
that.
we'll have to do a part two
Okay.
in due time, because what I found was like, oh my gosh, I mean, all the biblical scholars are saying that's the important stuff they took out. Like that's what
Mhm.
they talk about someone's soul. It's like we it's been with us all along. We've been in the hamster wheel, so to speak.
What a
And
better
when you
way,
can
what a
expand
better
your
way,
mind, it's like
what a better way to create fear than to make everybody believe you've only got one opportunity here.
yeah, and I think a lot of people are throwing it down the shitter. They need to shit or get off the pot. Like
Yes.
literally, right? Like,
Yes.
I mean, yeah, and it really makes me sad that people underestimate themselves and their self-worth and their bravery and their compassion.
Mhm.
And, everyone has been a sinner at some point, and I feel like some people just get very shameful and so forth. But I mean, I think what people need to realize is, why did you make that sin? Why were you feeling so down on yourself? You started going down. Like I like to think of our choices as algorithms,
Mhm.
because they really are when you
They
think
really
about it,
are. They really are.
right?
It's another thing that if you don't mind me putting a cherry on top of that, I would say that everybody's got life PTSD. I mean,
Yeah,
everybody. And those algorithms kick in because you're tired of having to deal with the nagging of that life PTSD.
that's a good way of putting that. I
Mhm.
love that. And even, I know as painful as it is, especially, when it comes to people losing their person or their husband or wife, or,
Mhm.
and that feeling of just you can't go on without them. And I mean, I know that that feeling is real. I saw my dad go through it, but I honestly feel that when let's put the church aside, and again, no disrespect to any church,
Mhm.
but when you can honestly start digging and do the things that we've been talking about, and a lot of the other interviewers as well, they're saying the same thing. Once you can do that, it's almost like you're able to talk to them, but really talk to them. Not like, I miss you, I wish you were here, but more like, I know you're here, I know you're watching. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
the one thing
cool.
I would add too is an important part of awakening is not, especially if you've been in a religion like the LDS religion, don't get caught in another religion. And when I say that, I am expressing that from the perspective of a belief system. Okay,
Yes.
a lot of people stumble out of Mormonism and into atheism. A lot of LDS people and other things, whether it's
Yeah.
New Age, and I'm not disparaging any of these. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the greatest gift of your own self-discovery is not getting caught up and tied down. It's like staying single spiritually,
Yeah. Good.
not getting married.
You were just like a prophet in yourself. It's such words of wisdom. I love it because it's so simple and you say things that just can resonate without this, these long, extensive, bullshit that everywhere you look, they're trying to give you some like, it's like when the Roswell balloon, and they give
Mm,
you all the like that stuff. Oh my gosh.
mind-bending philosophies. If it's hurting your brain, there's something wrong.
Yeah, yeah. And meditation. If anyone can get, just that's what I found. That was like a big, big relief for me. And I'm going to be completely honest, and some people might be like, "Oh, I don't believe it," but I can tell you my kids and Glenn saw it is, me, Bob, I'm super high strong, like
Mhm.
super high strong. And I can stay focused and all that on things that I do. However, I'm just really high strung and I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. And so I started to listen to a guided meditation. And that's what really helped me a lot to start with, because they're actually helping you, when to breathe, when to release, and all this stuff. And honestly, I am not even kidding you. I mean, I went through years and years of going through the change. And women that are watching this, that are going through it right now, I feel you, I hear you. It's the loneliest place. So never mind leaving a church and doing that at the same time, and kids. But what I found was I became so relaxed. I became so relaxed. I couldn't believe it. And then when I calmed my mind down, this is the whole premise of meditation, is once I calmed my mind down to just block everything else out, I could think so much clearer and I was so much happier. And I think as soon as I started it, within 2 months, my symptoms like dropped by half, probably, on top of a supplement. I can't even tell you, when they finally said, "Oh, you are going through the change," I'm like, "You assholes, I've been suffering." But I didn't want to go on the
That's the
hormonal
one thing you
treatment.
don't say.
Right? But I didn't want to go on the hormonal treatment because, as I
Yeah.
found, that's the stuff that causes all the disease. And so I didn't want to go on it. And so my holistic doctor friend Becky's, I'm not even kidding you, ladies, if you're going through this, seriously, you can order it on Amazon. You can go to Whole Foods. The brand is called Feminescence, and it's basically a maca root with some other herbs and so forth. But I was told specifically, it's not going to kick in right away. Take it, set your alarm every morning. I woke up every morning, set my alarm, took it, and then right then I set my alarm for noon. You don't want to take it after noon. But what I found was about a month and a half, almost, between that and meditation, probably I was nearing the end of just everything. And it was, I was so thankful, because honestly, it's like people leaving the church or anything, when you have that much stress and tension and your body is just doing, like, you lose your memory, you literally have hot and cold sweats and you have to get up every few minutes to pee, and just, you can't sleep. It's just awful. You guys just, it makes me so upset. We got all the stuff. We had to have the
I
babies in our
know.
belly and push them out.
Suppression of the divine feminine. This is
Oh,
part of it.
oh, I can't wait. It's going to rise, because once these women really find out the truth,
Mm.
oh, as I like to
They're going to be
say,
pissed. They're going to be pissed.
they're going to be so pissed. I'll be like, come on, let's
The men
do
are going to have
this.
to, the men truly are going to have to run and hide for a while.
But we're
This
just
is
gonna take
Sharon. This
over.
is why I'm aligning myself right now. I don't want to be in trouble when everything opens up. You know what I mean?
Ah! I think that you and I were supposed to connect. I think all the other people we met through our events were supposed to connect. Like, it just finally feels really nice to be around people you don't feel like you have to be judged and say something without being like, "Oh shit, that's crazy." Because
Yeah.
they just don't
Yeah.
get it. And I feel like, honestly, they're really missing out, because when they find out it really wasn't anything wrong with us, and we weren't the ones that were very judgmental, and they figure out that maybe they were the ones that were judgmental, it's going to be a lot of humble pie, but we're not going to be jerks. This is what it's all about, this great awakening. We're here to help each other.
Indeed. Indeed. Thank you for inviting me on tonight. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. You did great. Oh my gosh. When I heard your first interview, I was like, I got to interview him, because it just resonated so much.
I'm
So
glad.
thank you. Thank you so much, Bob.
You bet.
And thank you for all that are jumping on, watching. Please share and subscribe, because if you know anyone that you feel could benefit from sharing their story, like there's just something that they need to get out, they're going to find their tribe here. And I'm telling you, the more of us that get together and say, no more, no more, that's when the magic happens. And it's time. It's time. I'm super, super
It is.
excited. I can't wait. Well, thank you so much, Bob.
You bet.
Stay in touch. You have a good night. And is there any place that people could connect with you by chance, or no,
Oh
you're
no, you
okay?
know, the universe will work it out. If you're supposed to meet me, you'll meet me.
I like that. There could be a lot of duality in that one.
All
All right. All right. All right, Bob. Well,
right.
you have a good night. Thanks
You
for
as
your
well.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.